not individuals. Individualism is now considered a threat. It is frowned upon by those of the group and the hive and the herd. They don't like individuals. They want you to think for the good of the majority, not the individual. Individualism, in fact, is viewed as being selfish by the group. They don't like that. So, all right. With that said, let's welcome back Charlotte. Hi. Thank you for being here, as always.
Well, good evening, Jeff. And did you ever... Yeah, I guess you did. So did I. Did either of us... we knew the day had to come when we would say... Yeah. When we would say that we really can't see much for the future of our children if this continues. I mean, it's not that Obama did it all, but he certainly is putting the Soviet system in.
He's a freckle on the cancer. That's all he is.
That's right. He's their puppet. Yeah. And evidently, the American people, up until now, I think they're beginning to feel a little bit uncomfortable with him. Mm-hmm. But
I should hope so. Those thinking Americans have really no choice but to be uncomfortable. And yet, if you listened to the so-called news a few minutes ago, folks, and heard Bernanke talking about how it serves no purpose and we shouldn't even begin to consider how this mess occurred. We should simply move forward.
Oh, well, he would not want us to know, for instance.
Of course not.
Well, Jeff, let me read just a little quote here.
Yeah.
This is from this is in my book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. 1918, this is for people to understand that what's happened now with this catastrophe was no mistake. Here we go. William Boyce Thompson, Federal Reserve Bank Director and founding member of the Council on Foreign Relations, stated that, quote, Russia is pointing the way to great and sweeping world changes. It is not in Russia alone that the old order is passing. There is a lot of the old order in America, and that is going too. I'm glad it is so. When I sat and watched those democratic conclaves in Russia, I felt I would welcome a similar scene in the United States. Now, this is 1918. Now, there was a wonderful woman. Her name was Maxine Tremaine. She died a few years ago. Came from Massachusetts. She was a great researcher, and she would go to Geneva, just like every other year, to do research at the UN building there, the headquarters, the International Bankers and all.
Right.
And she gave a speech once, which came back in 1983, and it was entitled, and please, folks, remember this. This is what we're looking at right now, is the beginning, the implementation of world government, but world government is nothing more than international socialism called for by Lenin and Stalin, okay, under the guise of regionalism and all these other terms, all right? So she came back, she gave a speech, and it said, Russia is the model country of international bankers and industrialists administered by the UN headquarters in Geneva. And she would go there every other year. And she was a whopper researcher. Then she went on. William Boyce Thompson, that I mentioned up front a little earlier, personally contributed $1 million to the Russian Revolution. He also arranged for the transfer of money from the United States to the communist revolutionaries. Okay, now look, start there. And then we move on. We end up with the Federal Reserve. We move into the 1930s with the Carnegie Corporation's little booklet that I have, Conclusions and Recommendations for the Social Studies, that was considered by Professor Harold Lasky, a philosopher of British socialism, at bottom, he said, at bottom and stripped of its carefully neutral phrases, the report is an educational program for a socialist America. That program has been carried on since the 30s, Carnegie overseeing it, all of our presidents getting deeply involved, like Reagan signing the agreements with Gorbachev in 1985, and, of course, Eisenhower was the first one to sign them. The whistle was blown on these activities in 1953. The activities of really communizing the United States. Those were the Reese Committee hearings. And that was when Norman Dodd, who was the researcher, the investigator for the hearings, was told, and this is the key to it all, by Rowan Gaither of the Ford Foundation, who was called up to New York by Rowan Gaither, and Dodd told me this personally over dinner. Of course, it's all over. It's been published, et cetera, not in the major media.
Right.
But he told me, and it was a dinner in a restaurant in Washington. He told me exactly what happened. That Gaither told him, said, Mr. Dodd, we get our instructions from the White House and on how to spend our money. And we've been told how to spend our money, and that is to change America so that it can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. And I have followed this thing, Jeff, through from point to point to point, even, to 1989 when Louis Freeh, head of the FBI, met with a KGB guy in Moscow, and they both toasted the merger. Right?
Well, there you go. It's all, and you go back to World War II. Those of you who remember, and I've talked about this for almost 15 years now. When I first found out about when I first learned this 15 years ago, Major Jordan's Diaries.
Yes, and I was going to mention that.
All right, there you go. Ahead, tell us about it.
That's a key book. I mean, I've written quite a few things here that are on a list, and that's one of them. Let's talk about Major Jordan's Diaries. It's my favorite. I think it is. And I've got thousands of books, and they're all a lot of them are at AmericanDeception.com. The books themselves, but Major Jordan's Diaries, I think, of all the books I've ever looked at or read or perused or heard about, is the most important book ever written in regard to how we turned over all of our secrets under Lend-Lease with the Russians in the early 40s, including the makings of the atom bomb.
We sent them the plans, we sent them everything. Every single secret we had basically was sent to the Soviets during the war.
I'm very, very glad you mentioned that. And these are the key points that people are, because you've got Tom coming on Fife after,
right.
And I think it's very important for people, for me to have come on earlier with you, Jeff, to help people understand that what Tom is going to tell you doesn't sound so ludicrous when you understand this history, because it's all been put in place and leads up to what Tom will tell you tonight. Now, I was going to go on. You were talking about Major Jordan. That's the key document. If ever there was a fire or something, and
you'd grab that one, wouldn't you? That's
Charlotte,
one.
What is the one you want to hold on to in the library? And I would say from Major Jordan's Diaries, and people can get that on the internet. I think Sam put it at American Deception, and I know that Edward Griffin's marvelous website, I think he has it as well.
Yeah.
And
you can get it online.
And then we were talking about Tony Sutton. I mean, you're great, Jeff. I mean, you and I are really on the same wavelength. He completed, and I knew him very well because I turned over the list of members of the Order Skull and Bones to him, to Sutton in the early 80s, because he couldn't understand. This is the guy who had spent 4 or 5 years researching United States aid to the Soviet Union, technological and military aid to the Soviet Union. I'll never forget when he told me, he did that for the Hoover Institute, and when he said to me on the phone, he said, I don't understand. He said, you'd think I would. I've written, about 20,000 pages on this, and I keep shaking my head. And then I think I don't know how it happened, but I guess I may have mentioned the Order of Skull and Bones, and I may have mentioned that I just received the membership list going all the way back to the founding, including the current members. And he asked me, he said, would you lend them to me? And I did. And he copied them, and he called me, and he said that he looked at them, and that was when he understood. He looked at them on the dining room table, and he knew who was behind this whole merger with the Soviet Union.
Wow, what a moment for him. Yeah. Major Jordan's Diaries, available online in e-format. I've got a copy of it in 8.5 by 11 format. Crucial reading. They don't worry about the adults. They say, give us the children. And the indoctrination, of course, begins there. And they'll wait 20 years and they have a whole generation or less.
That's right. And, they say, I think there's a quote in there from Paul Mort, who was an educational change agent in the 30s and 40s in New York. And when they were putting the changes for the whole country into Montgomery County, Maryland, in the late 60s, they brought him down from New York to put those changes in. Actually, so much of it is exactly what's going in now with the community-oriented stuff, community service, community, all this communist stuff. Anything that begins with a C-O-M, watch out.
Communitarianism, of course.
Absolutely. And he said, Paul Mort said, as a change agent, he knew it took 50 years from the initiation, the needs assessment, when they decided how they had to change us, right, to getting the programs in. And that was in 1960, right, that he said that.
Right.
And they're right on target. But let me read something here from William Foster. Now, most Americans probably never heard of him, but he was the chairman of the Communist Party USA, and he wrote a book in 1932, Toward a Soviet America. He was buried in the Kremlin with honors in 1961.
There you go.
And this is what he called for. And all of this has happened, folks. I'm trying to let you know that when you hear later on the message from Tom Fife, all of this has happened. So what he's going to tell you is not going to come as such a huge surprise, all right? Here we go. This is out of Toward a Soviet America, written in 1961 by the head of the Communist Party USA, which, by the way, still exists and is very active. He calls for a United States Department of Education, the implementation of a scientific materialist philosophy. That means absolutely no God, no right, no wrong, no nothing. Studies revolutionized, being cleansed of religion, patriotic, and other features of the bourgeois ideology. Students taught on the basis of Marxian dialectical materialism. Internationalism, that's the globalism we're looking at, and general ethics international, and the obsolete methods of teaching will be superseded by a scientific pedagogy, and that's what I wrote about so much in my book. That's Pavlov. And now the new Department of Education secretary that has by Obama, chosen by Obama, he calls for paying children for good grades. Did you know that, Jeff?
I couldn't believe it. Let me rephrase. I could believe it. Yeah, that's where we're going. Yes, paying kids for good grades.
Yeah, paying kids. So that's total stimulus response, Pavlov, et cetera.
Pavlov would be howling with laughter.
Oh, he'd be thrilled. That's the new Secretary of Education. His name is Arne Duncan. And then Foster goes on to say the whole basis and organization of capitalist society will be revolutionized. It sure has been. Science will become materialistic, hence truly scientific. God will be banished from the laboratories as well as from the schools. Okay, that's Foster. In 1932, an awful lot went on in the 30s. Then you have, in 1943, I have to give Dennis Cuddy credit for this one. This is a good one. This is from Time magazine, March 16th, 1942. American Melbourne. And this is a direct quote, 1943, Time magazine. You'd never read this nowadays because they were quite critical of this program at Time magazine. And it goes on and says, these are the high spots of organized U.S. Protestantism, super Protestant, new program for a just and durable peace after World War II, colon. Now, I'm going to read these to you. Every single one of these things has happened. 1943, this is laid out in Time magazine. Okay, ultimately a world government of delegated powers. Worldwide freedom of immigration. Complete abandonment of U.S. isolationism. Strong, immediate limitations on national sovereignty. Don't forget, folks, this is coming from the Protestant church. All the churches, a lot of them, 30 of them, I think. International control of all armies and navies. Those are the U.S.-Soviet disarmament agreements. A universal system of money as planned is to prevent inflation and deflation. Watch it. Look what's happening right now with all these meetings all over the place. Progressive elimination of all tariff and quota restrictions on world trade. How about that? A democratically controlled international bank to make development capital available in all parts of the world.
That's what Bernanke just said in the newscast, the international form of financial and monetary control and regulation.
That's right. And then it says, program was adopted by 375 appointed representatives of 30-odd denominations at Wesleyan University by the Federal Council of Churches. Every local Protestant church in the country will now be urged to get behind the program. So that's very interesting, isn't it? And then in 1944, the UN is founded, and the first Secretary General and key founder was Soviet Alger Hiss, and 2/3 of the founders were communists.
2/3. Wow.
Yep.
All right. Hold on, Charlotte. Folks, this is amazing. Remember, this is 1942, in the middle of the war. Uncle Joe Stalin is our ally, our buddy. And Lend-Lease is fully underway. Lend-Lease? What a joke. All right, back in just... The stories keep rolling in, and they're appalling, and no one seems to notice. I mean, you won't find this very often in the mainstream media, the Zionist media. Breaking the taboo on Israel's spying efforts on the United States. Yes, Israel runs one of the most aggressive and damaging espionage networks in the world, targeting the United States, its best ally, and yet public discussion is almost non-existent. You won't hear about it. It's covered up. This, folks, is all tied together, all of it. Charlotte, go ahead, please.
Okay. I've just got some more, and then we can, a free-flowing conversation, but I want to get these specific dates and events into the ears of your audience before they hear Tom. What I'm trying to point out, folks, is that we're merging with the Soviet Union, and don't fall for that business about the Soviet Union collapsing. The Soviet Union may have collapsed, but the communism is now worldwide much stronger than it ever was before, and very, very strong in the United States. And I'm going to continue here with a few other points that should help you understand that. Now, in the 50s, and this refers a lot to today, Secretary of Agriculture Ezra Benton had a meeting with Premier Khrushchev of the Soviet Union when Khrushchev visited. And Khrushchev told him, they were discussing agriculture, et cetera, but Khrushchev said, "You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we'll keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you'll finally wake up and find you already have communism. We won't have to fight you. We'll so weaken your economy until you'll fall like overripe fruit into our hands." End quote. Benton referred to Lenin's comment, which at the end of this little thing that I wrote, he said, Lenin said, the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. That was a speech that you can look that up if you want, that Ezra Benton gave at Brigham Young University around 1968. Then we had 1958, President Eisenhower signed the first United States-Soviet agreements with the Soviet Union at the peak of the Cold War in all areas, including education, military, medicine, art, sports, etc. Then you had 1985, President Reagan signed the agreements with Gorbachev merging our two education systems. And there's extensive information on that in my book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. In 1989, this was an agreement that really sort of blew me away. It was the second U.S.-Soviet education and cultural agreement, and it called for the placing, this is really interesting, of statues of Russian cultural figures on American soil. I thought that was pretty fascinating. So then we go on. From that time on, extensive work took place and is going on now in the United States for 20 years implementing the Soviet school-to-work system overseen by the U.S. Department of Education and the Carnegie Corporation. Then you have, in the year 2000, during a visit to London in March of 2000, former Soviet dictator Gorbachev referred to the emerging European Union as the new European Soviet. I find that interesting because we're putting in the North American Union now.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any title for it other than the new American Soviet. You know, I mean, people wake up. So anyway, Mr. Bush at that time discussed at length the European Union's role in accelerating convergence of the United States and the former Soviet Union. He said, quote, "The dream of centuries is close at hand." This is George Bush, our last president, declared President Bush. "When you integrate your markets, which is happening right now, it's terrible, and share a currency, which is happening in the European Union he's talking about, but it's going to be the same thing here, you are creating the conditions for security and common purpose. In all these steps, Americans do not see a rival, but rather the success of our allies. We applaud your progress. Another mission we share is to encourage the Russian people to find their future in Europe and with America. A new Russian-American partnership is being forged. America and Europe must throw off old suspicions and realize our common interest with Russia." In 2003, and I did a great deal of writing on this, you can find all my articles at my website under articles. In 2003, former head of the KGB, the secret police of the Soviet Union, General Evgeny Primakov, has been hired as a consultant by the Department of Homeland Security to assist in development of the internal passport. That's the real ID. So Bush hired him to put that together. 2004, Homeland Security hires ex-Stasi chief Marcus Wolf, known as the infamous and sinister Great Silver Fox, his 1980s CIA code name. He was head of the international intelligence gathering arm of East Germany's Ministry for State Security, or Stasi, which ran a network of about 4,000 agents outside East Germany, infiltrating NATO headquarters and the administration of German Chancellor Willy Brandt. Now, how can the American people, if they knew these things that I've read to you, doesn't this really, how can you possibly take all these pieces of the puzzle and put them together and not have
see it.
some sort of a picture of United States-Soviet merger?
It's to me mind-boggling that people can't see it, but they can't, and a lot of them don't want to. First of all, the majority can't because they're not given the pieces. The only place they're going to find it is on the internet and through the work of yours and others. I don't know. It's difficult. I used to take the American people to task, perhaps too much. They have been victimized by the most ruthless, withering, technologically advanced mind control and utter conditioning machinery ever. That's
right. And you mentioned that's the article I wrote called "The Devil's Seven-Pronged Fork," and that deals with that. And I say they've been victimized through gradualism, the dialectic, the seven prongs of the devil's fork.
And we're back with Charlotte. Okay, Charlotte, go ahead.
Well, I think there's couple more quotes. We might as well get as many as we can.
Yeah, please.
Because we can ask, everybody's saying, well, who really is responsible for all of this? Well, we are in a way, because we elect these Congress people, and they are either not on the job or they are part of the problem. And I think the American people, as you said, they have been victimized. You probably get tired of, well, you don't beat up on them as much as I do, the audience, but about 4 years ago, I said to myself, I just can't keep going after the poor American people the way I do, picking on them because they don't understand what's going on, and they don't get it, and they don't join the battle to turn this thing around. And so I thought, what on earth how am I going to shift my thinking on this? And I wrote this article. It came to me called The Devil's, I think it started out with the Devil's 5-pronged fork. I think the fork has 7 prongs now. But it is on my website under articles, and I really like that article. I've written many articles in my life, but I think that one really hits the nail on the head as far as how the insiders, and I'm going to give you a quote from Rockefeller here in a second, but how they managed to implement this agenda, this totally alien, unconstitutional agenda, to take our country, the greatest country in the world, that has had more people coming to our shores than any other country in the history of the world, how they could convince the American people to give up this great system and our Constitution, and they did. And to take our values away, to absolutely damage our children in the schools, not only through horrible academic, in quotes, programs, but terrible values-destroying programs, etc. So I wrote the article, and actually the 7-prong fork, I think I can remember the prongs. The first prong is gradualism, terribly important, like the frog in the cold water. You heat the water up gradually.
Oh, yeah,
like
critical tool.
200 years ago, right? Frog's dead. We're dead. So, we didn't realize it. And then you have the dialectic, where you create the problem deliberately to get the people to scream, and then you come to them with a solution, and they love you, and they accept whatever solution that you have for them, and that's terribly important. Then you've got the Federal Reserve, creation of as much money as they want. You've got controlled media. You've got education. You've got the destruction of the children's values. And I don't know what I may have forgotten there, but semantic deception. I think that
semantic deception.
Semantic deception, where they use these words like basics. Parents think basics means reading, writing, and arithmetic. It doesn't. It means understanding that the Constitution is outmoded, that you must be tolerant of all behaviors, no matter how horrible they are. These are the new basics. You've got to be an internationalist. You've got to get rid of the ideas of sovereignty and patriotism. This is the new basics. I mean, they have all these words that mean something different to you than they do to them. I mean, I learned this when I was on a local school board, and they were trying to get the destructive values destruction, I call it, into the school, and we killed the program at a school board meeting. Even the liberals went with me. Next day, the superintendent called me and said, "Charlotte, would you mind if we had a program in decision making?" And I knew him well enough. He's a major change agent. And I said, "Tom, you know that I know what that is. I would object to that." But you see, he could have gone to the people with that. And actually he did. Even though he knew I knew, he did go to the people later with a program in decision making. And everybody in the community thought that just sounded great. And it was the same thing as values clarification. So that's very important. I think the most important ones there are the semantic deception, the gradualism, and the dialectic.
And excuse me, but the semantic deception has to be about the easiest one of all for them to use now. The dumbing down of American youth has yielded exactly what they had planned for. Idiots. And playing these semantic games with them is easier than shooting ducks in a barrel. I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah, they're total. I mean, really, it's tragic to have to call them idiots, but it's totally impossible to have a conversation with the average American. No. I mean, do you find it difficult?
You can't. No, and as soon as they start talking about Obama, it's over. It's done.
I just have to leave because right all along, I had tremendous concerns about Obama. I think I've been around too long to to not have had those concerns. And when I went, I did not like John McCain at all. In fact, I worked very hard to defeat him, John McCain, in our state of Maine here. I drafted a letter, and it was sent to all the delegates, Republican delegates, to vote for Ron Paul, not for John McCain, exposing John McCain.
Right.
And that's how strongly I felt about McCain.
Right.
But, Jeff, I'm going to tell you something. You know what I had to do? When I got to the polls, because Ron Paul wasn't on the ballot, when I got to the polls and I saw Barack Obama, and I really didn't know that much about him because he's pretty slick.
A lot of people still don't know very much about him.
No, none of us know anything. And how a man who we know nothing about got elected, like Hitler got elected, same thing, charisma, all this stuff, that scared me to death. And so when I had to pull the lever, I voted for John McCain. I did.
My, how interesting.
Well, I tell you, and I hate to tell you how much money I spent to try to defeat him at our convention. I spent a lot of money with that letter because I knew that John McCain was just horrible.
Yeah, but see, you just said it. You knew. You knew.
Yeah.
But what did you know about Obama?
I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And that's what scared me to death.
Yeah. Well,
so better the devil I knew
that's right. Yeah,
than the one I didn't.
Well, McCain was a designated loser, as we know now. This whole thing has been orchestrated for 15 years.
Well, you know what? If he hadn't lost, he would have been okay for them. You know, they always pick.
Of course. They can't lose. They got the deck stacked.
Yes, absolutely, and that was all planned way back in the end of the 19th century. That was in Tragedy and Hope. Marvelous quote there about how they had the industrialists got together and they decided they had to control both parties, Republican and Democrat, so that when the sheeple, went to the polls to vote, we'd think that we were going to get change, but we wouldn't, because both parties would be controlled.
Yeah, somebody cornered him and kept asking him, well, where's the change? Where's the change? And he finally said, well, I'm the change.
He's the change. Well, in a way, he did tell us. There was one interview where he said he was going to redistribute the wealth.
Well, he is. He's absolutely. Look at this as the largest redistribution of wealth in human history. Right. What's going on right now?
Well, it's true, but he did tell us that.
Yeah, but we didn't get it. At least I'm speaking in terms of the American public. They didn't get it. They didn't understand how.
I don't think they know what it means. No. I mean, they've been so dumbed down. They don't know that that's the major plank of the Communist Party. Redistribute the wealth. Of course. That's fair. That's free trade.
Well, look at his mentor, Frank Davis.
I know. Look at. I know.
A communist? Come on.
That's right. I often talk to people about this. What if you were running for office, Jeff, or I was, and they found out that, my grandfather was head of the Ku Klux Klan, my grandmother was, had murdered a lesbian or something, or, just all sorts of things, horrible, horrible things, right? Don't you think they might get after me? I mean, I don't believe I'd have a chance. No chance.
No, look at Obama. They have successfully sequestered and marginalized Larry Sinclair, who has not changed his story one nano.
You are not kidding.
Particulate.
And I have told people that that is so important, and I hope you will maybe mention that tonight. Because that's so important.
Yeah. No, they're still after him. Now they're sicking the IRS on him. They've tried to block publication of his book. Anyway, the guy is really quite a courageous American. He's standing on his truth, and you got to admire that. Even if you disagree with him, the guy has not changed his position, and he has tried to point out the Donald Young murder issue and how crucial that was, and Larry Bland and the others. This is not a joke, folks. These people play for keeps. I'm quite amazed that Larry is still alive, and fortunately, he went public and big time on this program and on his own website and so forth. That's probably kept him alive to a large degree.
I think tonight when you have Tom on, these two things that you've got the goods on him with what Tom's talking about and what you're talking about, and Larry. And then there's so much more.
Oh, there's a wheelbarrow full of stuff on this slime bucket. It is amazing. Right out of the Chicago mob criminal milieu, perfectly groomed. They've mocked us. They have mocked all of us with this,
Exactly.
and laughed at us.
That's a very good way to put it. We have been mocked. Maybe we deserve it. I don't know. We certainly didn't care for our Constitution. We certainly have never felt that we had any responsibility whatsoever for our children's futures, in making sure we elect the right people, that we watch how they vote. I never forget one little, it's sort of a stupid little example, but it was a gal who'd been to Wellesley or some big fancy college who said to me, when I asked her to call her congressman about the giveaway of the Panama Canal, this is way back, she looked at me and she said to me, well, why do I have to do that? I voted for him.
Well,
that's the attitude. You vote for them and then forget it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what
they're going to take care of us, just like when you go to your doctor. Oh, my doctor will take care of me. I don't have to do anything differently.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck tonight with
Thanks,
the interview.
Charlotte.
I wish I could hear it. How can I hear it?
Well, I'll get you a copy of it. There, Charlotte?
Yes, I am, Jeff. And good evening to you and your listeners.
You are an elegant human being.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing, too. I don't know how elegant I feel tonight. I'm so angry about, sometimes I really do get angry. If one reads emails, one gets angry.
Right.
I'm angry about this cap and trade thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're aware of the whistleblower, Carlin, Mr. Carlin, over at the EPA, who blew the whistle on research. 38 years of experience as a senior operation research analyst, blew the whistle on global warming. You're aware of this paper, aren't you?
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, well, anyway, this is just a little, I did get an email out. You've got my email somewhere, but I took an excerpt out into the email I sent to everybody, and I mean by everybody, all your listeners and your listeners' friends and family and all should be on the phone tomorrow, no later, to your senators in regard to telling them to vote no on the cap and trade because it passed the House. Vote no, and I don't claim to be an expert on this subject at all, but I do know one thing, that there are 30,000 scientists out there who've signed a petition in regard to the global warming hoax, and I think that's a lot of scientists.
Actually, more than that, you're right.
But I think the most important thing here is that this fellow, whoever his name is Carlin, he's a senior researcher at the EPA. Let's see, I just want to get this for you so your listeners. The EPA, I'm going to read this. This is an excerpt. Starting on June 24th, 2 days before passage of the cap and trade carbon tax bill, H.R. 2454, by a vote of 219 to 212 in the House of Representatives, a scandal erupted. Okay, folks out there, a scandal erupted in one of the government agencies. Well, that's rather unusual when it's this kind of a scandal, okay? A scandal erupted over the Environmental Protection Agency's aggressive suppression of a highly critical critique of the EPA's publicly stated position on climate change, this global warming, by a senior operation research analyst with 38 years experience. The critique, I might also point out, he was MIT and I think California, a similar like MIT and California school. I've got in other papers. The critique was completed in March of 2009, but its release was squashed by the EPA. Had this analysis and opinion been released on a timely basis, it is very possible that H.R. 2454, which passed the House 2 days ago, would have been defeated on June 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I've asked people to do, there's a very important, if you go on the Internet, let's see, where should you go? Where did I go? Just go cap and trade, Google cap and trade, and get in there, and you can look at Senator Inhofe's video. It's an excellent video, and he will explain to you basically a lot more than what I just have explained. And he will point out that, and I don't even want to say this on radio, that the vote in the Senate probably will vote no. But, if I mention that they may vote no, all of your listeners are probably going to say, well, they don't have to call. look, Senator Inhofe can say all he wants. They may vote no because of this new information, but don't count on it. Please, folks, this is so important. If this bill passes the Senate, we won't have to worry about going down because of George Soros or the Bilderbergers or Kissinger or Geithner or anybody else or our, in quotes, president. This bill, if it passes, our country is dead.
No arguments here, my friend.
There is one part of it, and I haven't even read it, so everybody's got to realize that I'm not an expert on the bill either. But I have been following information on the Internet, and most of the people that do email me stuff are pretty knowledgeable on the subject. And I understand that Tom DeWeese sent me through something, and he's the American Policy Center, very good. And Tom sent me an email and said that part of the bill, which says that every American household will have to spend at least $25,000 or $30,000 to get their houses, what's the word we want? Fuel efficient, okay?
Yep.
Well, fuel efficient or whatever it is. That sounds like a car. But this bill says that every single American house will have to spend that kind of money. They have to come up with that kind of money. Tom said they're already doing it in Oakland, California, and he thinks in other places. All of this comes under that innocent, in quotes, word, sustainable development.
Right. Well, it's all communitarianism. It's the bleeding of what's left of America's lifeblood into the hands of these inhuman monsters who are running the show.
Well, it really is total Marxism, and I recall there's some documents that I have lost in my. I can count them on one hand in the past 30 years, and there was a document that I saw about 35 years ago, and it was a meeting of leading communists, and they were discussing the problems of getting the American people to come on board for world government. And I mean, for your listeners all know that the United Nations was put together by sort of, I think, 3/4 of the people who wrote the charter were communists. But they had concerns that they couldn't pull all of us on board, and how are we going to do it? And it said the only issue that you can get both conservatives and liberals to get on board with, agree on, is the environment. And they decided to use the environment to do that. And that was a very, very intelligent decision. And it worked. And that is where we're losing it. I tell you, Jeff, I just lost a piece of property right here on the river in Maine. When we bought this property, there was one piece, but we broke it into two, so hoping that that would keep them from telling me that I couldn't sell part of it later, right? And so we broke it into two, and I could have easily sold the other piece. It's a magnificent piece of property.
Right. And
we still have good people working in our local political offices. Like, this is a code enforcement officer. And we do have good ones. And he called me, and he said, Charlotte, look, we've got a new ordinance coming out of Augusta on shoreland zoning. And he said, I wanted to make sure that you were okay on bird wading areas, where the birds wade, whether you can build on that property. Is that property covered by the bird wading ordinance? And he said, you're okay, you can build. But he said, I found something else, and you're not allowed to build. And he said, this is archaeological. The Historical Association or something in bed with the government, and they've drawn up this, added to the ordinance. Our property happens to be in an area where the Indians were here.
Sure.
And they're Indian heads. So I cannot build on that property.
Arrowheads.
I couldn't sell the property as a buildable piece of property, and I'm not grandfathered.
So they just stole your property.
What?
They just neutralized your ownership, basically.
Absolutely. So, it's true. I have a friend who's just brilliant. She always just says, Charlotte, the American people will know it's true when it happens to you, and that's exactly it. And
so what they're saying is, Charlotte, is they found a few Indian arrowheads on the property. Is that it?
Yes.
All right, that's it. That's all it takes, folks. And so you cannot build on your property.
No, and so he was good enough to say, listen, you've got 2 weeks to get a permit, and you've got to get a septic design, you've got to get a house design and everything. Get this to me. And then that permit will only last for 1 year. You've got to build within 1 year. And if you don't build within 1 year, we'll give you an extension for another year. But after 2 years, that's it. You've had it.
Wow.
So I know this isn't new information to your listeners, but...
No, it is. It's always helpful. Don't underestimate that.
Well, you know what's helpful is when it happens to one of us, then we really know it's true, because nobody can say to me, oh, that'll never happen.
That's an important thing. We'll take a break. We'll come right back. Let's talk when we come back about that. Okay, we're back with Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt. Let's spend just a moment here, Charlotte, on the idea of disconnect. And then I'm going to play a little bit from the video you were kind enough to forward on, which is up at Rense.com, or will be momentarily, as a featured story about cap and trade and how we must lean on these just greasy, slimy, despicable human beings that in many cases are called senators. The American individual who has been, and we are now in our, 2.5 generations of dumbed down? I mean,
I think it goes really back. I was even to my father's generation at Yale,
but
and that was he graduated in 1924.
Right. But the tipping point, I think, the modern tipping point came about 2.5 generations ago. And I'll tell you, when I knew it was here, and I didn't know anything about you or your work, but when I saw MTV the first time, I understood TV already. I knew where we were going. Yeah, so that's it. The disconnect is enormous. The disparity between those who have knowledge and those who don't is huge. The idea of trying to alert and enliven someone, if not resuscitate someone, who has no intellect or care to begin with is absurd, but it's something we're faced with. You cannot wake people up when they're dead. And there are a lot of zombies walking around here. So that's the kind of disconnect we're talking about. They can't bridge the gap. I saw a bumper sticker on a car the other day. It said, and it was new.
Yeah.
It said, I believe in Obama.
And I know. It makes me so sick.
Yeah.
You can go back to Aristotle, and I think that I have that quote in my book. He said that the people who are uneducated can be compared, or as dead as the dead, or something, in comparing them to the living and the dead, the uneducated are dead.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where it is, but it's right in the beginning of my book, and that was Aristotle.
Yeah,
and they might as well be dead.
Agreed.
I mean, that's what we're dealing with. I hate to admit it. I even have members of my own family, and I sent this thing out on cap and trade because I'm very upset about this. Mm-hmm. And we all better be. I mean, upset's hardly the word. This isn't a matter of left and right. That's the problem. A lot of people, they think this is a battle between the left and the right.
They're trapped in that
they're
absurd
trapped in this,
fantasy
and it's
world.
not. This is a battle for survival of all of us in this country.
Right.
Do we really? I mean, isn't it bad enough what's been done to us in the past couple of years that didn't have to happen? And then this to be dumped on us, which is going to absolutely wreck any hope of the economy getting better. We've got. Well, I'm not going to get into all this.
Well, wait till October, folks. It's coming home, and that appears to be the.
It's crucial, but there is one thing. I mean, when Senator Inhofe says he's got hope for this vote in the Senate, look, let's back it up. Let's back that hope up. And the other thing is, even if you don't know anything about global warming or cap and trade, this guy, Carlin, has to have your support. He is a gutsy, courageous whistleblower.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven knows what is going to happen to him. He was told by his boss. He's 38 years, MIT. He's a very bright
researcher in this field. And because he doesn't agree on the global warming issue, he was told by his boss that his paper was not going to be allowed to get out of the Environmental Protection Agency and would not, and he was warned, don't you dare let it out of here. Now, look, let's just look at Carlin. Every one of you. You may
did the
not
paper get out,
it.
Charlotte? Charlotte, did the paper get loose? Did he turn it loose?
Inhofe is. I don't think the paper's gotten loose.
Okay.
Maybe Inhofe has it.
All right, go ahead.
He says he's got the goods on him.
All right, very good.
He does.
Go ahead.
But the call to your senator should be for two reasons. One, to save the country and your grandchildren and children and the economy and the most wonderful way of life the world has ever known, okay? And number two is to support a gutsy government employee, a whistleblower.
Yeah.
How many do we have? We don't have any anymore.
No.
Heaven knows what's going to happen to him. Please, folks, you can easily get your senator's telephone number. You know, it's not that hard anymore with email. All you have to do is type in U.S. Senate into Google.
Type
and
your
you're
state,
get
U.S.
Get
Senate.
his phone number. Call and say, when you vote, and do it tomorrow, vote no on cap and trade.
2454.
It's
That's
serious.
what was passed in the House.
Is
By the way, one quick note. A lot of people say 219 to 212. Well, that was a close vote. No, folks, it wasn't close because a lot of chicken manure House representatives held back until they were sure it was going to pass, and then they voted no. The margin was bigger than that.
it's disgusting. And you know what? If they had had this information, I do believe that it would have been. It never would have
We're
passed.
talking about the numbers of blackmailed, threatened House and Senate members who are actually able to vote their conscience, if they have a conscience that is accurately and adequately informed, and that's another issue. But there is so much bribery and blackmail and threats going on there now. I hope this guy leaves the government service, goes public. He might as well. He's been threatened. Goes public all the way with his paper. He'll become a hero to that portion of here is a little piece of the YouTube video I'm going to post shortly that Charlotte was kind enough to forward on. Here it is.
The Congress of the United States is about to pass the most destructive piece of legislation in American history. And once again, they're using fast track so that we won't have time to respond. Cap and trade is a massive tax on the production of energy that will result in gasoline and home heating oil prices of more than $7 a gallon. That's correct, $7 a gallon. That tank of gasoline that cost you $34 in recent months will now cost $80. 200 gallons of home heating oil that cost you $450 in recent months will now cost you $1,000. Your electric bill will increase by 300%. Your natural gas bill will increase by 350%. But guess who pays the price? You do. From the time you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night, you send money to Washington. Every time you touch a light switch, turn on your coffee maker, switch on your computer, adjust the thermostat, start your car, run your barbecue, buy home heating oil, or run your air conditioner. But it doesn't end there. Every single product you buy will increase in cost. Manufacturers are the biggest users of energy. The average cost of energy built into products averages 20 to 30%. Obama wants to triple the cost of energy. And virtually every product you buy has to be delivered to your local retailer or directly to you. The biggest component of transportation is fuel. It doesn't take a genius to know that the cost of everything will go up. Don't stand for this massive intrusion in your life. Cap and trade is not cap and trade. Cap and trade is tax and spend. This will be the final nail in the coffin of the American middle class. The poor don't care about this issue because they don't pay for their transportation or heat their homes. The rich don't care because that's a small component of the money they make. You must act now. This is cap and trade. This is tax and spend. It's House Resolution 2454. That's H.R. 2454. You must call your representative right now.
Okay, as you know, cap and trade passed in the House. It is in the Senate now. That's what we're talking about. There was no exaggeration in there at all. And if you folks don't figure it out, some of you never will. But I'm not talking about you longtime listeners or folks who really get it. The middle class is marked for extermination.
Yep.
That's what this is really all about. The point there was very simple, very elemental. The lower classes don't give a good gosh darn.
Right.
The upper classes could care less. This is to wipe us people out, those who work hard, who make a reasonable amount of money, who live what they used to call the American dream. They want to take that away from us. Now, even in England, there was a measure introduced, or a big statement, I've forgotten who made it now, that the head of the power industry in England said, the British taxpayers are not paying enough for their energy to help deal with this climate change crisis. That means they're headed toward the same type of takeover as this is. And this is a takeover of your lives. It's a destruction of a standard of living that the world really has never seen before on the scale that we have achieved it here.
Yep. I mean, it's just, I'm sure every single one of your listeners is going to call their senator. Because if they're not going to, they wouldn't be listening to you, to your program, unless they cared. And but what I want is for them to tell their neighbors to do the same thing. This is serious business, and as I said before, it's not left versus right. And I'm so sick and tired of every battle being broken down.
Well, it's
every important issue broken down into left versus right.
Divide and conquer. That's what they do.
Yeah,
they split
absolutely. Divide and conquer. And of course, it was Lenin or one of them who said that the major thing that they have to do, of course, is destroy Christianity. But the other thing was destroy the middle class. And this is the nail in the coffin, as if we needed it. I mean, we hardly need anything after what's happened in this past year. I thought the last nail in the coffin had gone in, but this one is the biggest one.
Well, so far, you wait till there's much more coming, but this will do it. In the future, each successive blow will be like another shovelful of dirt on our coffin.
This man has, in how many months? It's not even 6 months.
No.
It's not even 6 months that this president of ours has basically destroyed this country.
Well, he has, on orders from his handlers, of course. This is all being orchestrated. But the people who supported him, shame on all of them, except for perhaps those who are not mentally capable of understanding the basic issues here.
But
many of them were.
Down, Jeff. They are so, these poor young people, they are so dumbed down, and even college graduates. I think in terms of brainwashing, and really, the American people have got to do a little research on brainwashing. They think it's just a term. They see it on TV shows, and James Bond says no, it's real. It's real. Brainwashing is absolutely real, and it works. And Benjamin Bloom said it, and he's a behavioral psychologist, and the teachers all know who he is because they have to go through his courses. But he said that he could take a student from here to there, let's say, from believing in the free market to believing in communism in 1 hour. Now, look, if that can be done in 1 hour, how many hours do your children spend in the public school system and in the college system? Between kindergarten and graduating from college or from high school. Can you imagine what has happened to their brains? No wonder their brains are absolutely soft and mushy. They can't think. They can only be indoctrinated. And they only believe what the screen tells them or what the media tells them. They cannot think. They don't know how to think anymore. There's no transfer going on in their head. They can't go from here to there.
No, there's no logical progression in thought. It's completely random, as one of their favorite words coined recently to describe what's fun, is actually describing them. They are a random generation. I call them Generation Zero. There's nothing there. They are utterly reactive. They are programmed to be completely members of the hive, and individual success is now considered to be some kind of arrogant conceit and is attacked by the masses. You succeed, you have something you really have a passion for, you're not going to have any friends, and that's witnessed by the English school children study that showed the majority of young people in middle school age in England, in the UK, are actually dumbing themselves down with full intent so they can have peer acceptance.
It's so tragic.
Oh, it is. Well, it's all being done by design. And I'll go a little further. If the first 5 months or whatever it is of this guy's alleged administration, this usurper, as Davy Kidd calls him, continue on in anywhere close to what we've seen so far, he will surpass Adolf Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Absolutely. I mean, he's moving much faster.
Much quicker.
I don't think any of us really
We didn't know. We had no idea they were going to spring the trap this quickly.
No.
We just didn't. And I'll stand on that statement, too. Stand by, please. We'll be right back with Charlotte. Tax and spend bill. But it's worse than that, because it really is, in a way, Charlotte, the genocide of a large part of what's left of a very tenuous hold on reality that this country's middle class has.
That's right.
We're fading. They are trying to create a two-tiered lower class, bottom of the barrel and semi-bottom of the barrel, with a little skeleton crew left in between so they don't have to get their hands dirty. Right. That's what it boils down to.
Global plantation.
Yeah.
You'll have the elite, always have them, and then you'll have the very poor, which we have with us. We always will, and there will be no middle class. And I don't understand Congress. I mean, I just don't understand how they can be so wicked bad. But the point is this: don't let them tell you next week after they voted that you didn't know about Mr. Carlin and you didn't know about this EPA, this guy, and the study on global warming that the EPA would not allow made public. Don't let them tell you they didn't know that, because if you don't call, they won't know, because they never know what's going on. They don't read the legislation anyway, but it would be a good idea if they did know about this one particular incident.
They never read it. They never read it.
They don't read it. I think the staff, I've always felt that the most important termites that the left has in the Congress are the staff. They very carefully hired. They got really far left Marxist staff, and they're the ones who come up with all of this legislation, and then they pass it on to the congressman or senator, and they don't have time to read it, and they're told to vote for it. But anyway, Jeff, let me give the couple of websites out for your listeners. My book is now a free download at deliberatedumbingdown.com. That's deliberatedumbingdown.com. And then my son has a marvelous website, which is all original hand-scanned documents, 130,000 pages he's scanned in, pure history, and that is called AmericanDeception.com. And the most important document there is the 3,000-page Reese Committee report, the transcript of the hearings of the investigation of the tax-exempt foundations, which have caused the problems we're talking about tonight. It's incredible. The transcript of those hearings were picked up, scooped up by the tax-exempt foundations so that you, the American people, would never know what happened back then. Well, there were a few copies left. I bought the last one available, I believe, 2 years ago, and we put it up on the Internet. And if you want to understand what happened, these are the hearings. This is testimony that was taken from different members of the foundations, etc., and you will find out exactly who was behind the demise of our Republican form of government and our economic system. It's AmericanDeception.com. Just very easy to remember, AmericanDeception.com. And if you want that particular entry, that 3,000-page document, just type Reese, R-E-E-C-E, into the search engine, and you'll be able to pull up, download that 3,000 pages, or be able to read a few of the pages on the Internet. If you send $50 to 3D Research Company, the address is there, my son will send you the 2 discs that has all of the entries at American Deception already downloaded. So it makes it much easier for you. All that information is there. That's an incredible website. It has everything about the community service, all of the history of what's happened. Nothing that's going on now is new. It's all been planned. The U.S.-Soviet education agreements, the merger with the Soviet Union, Norman Dodd's testimony, community education, which is going to be birth through death under the umbrella of the school district. That's going in now. That's Obama's plan as well, but it goes way back to the 1940s, the Mott Foundation. And if you want to type in the word FELD, F-E-L-D, F-E-L-D, in the search engine there, you will find the papers on community education. There's so much there that, your listeners are terrific. They're all well educated, but it's very good to have documents, real documents. It's not something Charlotte said or Jeff said. These are the documents that prove, go back to World War I, World War II, who's behind it all. The collection of the Masonic documents, Paul Fisher, who wrote Behind the Lodge Door,
right,
said that our collection was the finest collection in the world. That is also on that website.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I push those two websites because the more knowledge we have, hopefully, the more we can get the knowledge out to those who are really thirsty. I hope they're thirsty, but they're absolutely, they're just blind. They believe everything the major media tells them.
How can well, I know the answer to that, but rhetorically speaking, you look at this phenomenon that's going on, and you just ask yourself, how can any reasonable, rational person, even someone who's not particularly educated, buy into these lies, this transparent stream of propaganda, mind brainwashing? It does boggle the brain. And meanwhile, over in England again, which continues to be the open-air lab for post-Orwellian implementations of various laws and rules and regulations to see how much the people will take. And so far, they've taken nearly all of it. 4-year-old children, boys, are being expelled rather routinely from preschool for inappropriate sexual behaviors.
Oh!
Yeah, I ran the story last week.
Thursday, Friday.
The 4-year-olds, Charlotte, 4-year-olds. Now,
I cannot believe it. Really, I cannot, And, sometimes people, I know you have the problem too, Jeff. People sort of get upset with you because you have all this information, and they probably think you enjoy the work that you do. And you know what? Don't they realize that I don't believe any of us really enjoy anything we're doing? How could we? Wouldn't you rather be doing something else?
How can you enjoy watching
How
mass
can you
murder?
enjoy? You found that article about 4-year-olds engaging in, and then look who we have in the Department of Education, in the heading up the section for gay students and all. This guy is he pushed this most horrific agenda for homosexual education in the schools in Massachusetts. And he's been named to be the head of the Department for Special Students or something.
Pedophilia is being institutionalized in this country.
Yes, it is. It is.
Sure it is.
And we were just talking about how people don't want to listen, and they listen to the major media because they see it in the New York Times heading. It looks official, and they believe this. But Jeff, the reason they believe it is that they don't have anything in their head to compare it with.
None. No,
right?
They are without any frame of reference. They are random. They're adrift.
Yep, that's right. So anyway, this has been as usual, it get me upset, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
No, I get you upset. I hope I got your listeners upset about the cap and trade.
Well, if those who can don't, they deserve what they get.
Doesn't cost them anything to make that phone call. Folks, listen, you may have to spend, if this thing passes, $35,000 to get your house up to speed as far as being efficient, fuel efficient. Did you hear me? That's already happening, and that is in the bill, plus all those other things that Jeff read
from the other email that came
through. They keep
through.
adding things to these bills. This bill in the House started out 600 pages, and by the time it passed, it was almost 1,300. Nobody read it. Nobody knows what's in there, and that's how they pull this crap off. And none of the congressmen or senators read these bills. They don't.
No, they don't. But there is no excuse for any of us not to contact them. If this thing, we complain about the Patriot Act, we complain about all these other horrible pieces of legislation that have passed. Let's not let this happen with this one. We've got to stop it.
If not now, it may never happen. This is not going to quit. The attacks upon us and what's left of us are now in full charge, and they are not about to pull back on the throttle. So we're going to have to either wake up and be real patriots or snap on the leg irons. It's simple.
Well, it's true. I mean, even if we do get around to being real patriots, let's hope we do. We may not even win if we do, but we have a better chance. And if we would just get all of our neighbors and everybody to catch on, and I think in a way, let's say this: I do think the American people are sensing something is terribly wrong, and they're beginning, with some exceptions within my own family, they're beginning to understand where it comes from.
I think you're right. Thank you, Charlotte, as always, for everything you do, and I look forward to our next conversation.
You too, Jeff, and